Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. This is Kash Kompella, your host for today. I'm a research director with the Real Story Group, and our topic for today is the right way to select marketing automation in social technology. So moving to the next slide. So I just want to set a bit of context here. So the usual way we do these webinars is we sort of jump into how you can select a technology, a specific piece of software that you're interested in. But when you actually step back and think about it, you're selecting this technology to pursue an enterprise strategy for certain specific objectives and goals. So there are two sides to this, to achieving your objectives. One is obviously having the right tools in place. And the other side of the coin is that being able to exploit or effectively leverage the tools that you have purchased or are looking to purchase. So even if you don't take anything else out of this webinar, I hope you keep this framework in mind, which I'm calling the mind the gap model of technology selection. So what it essentially is saying is that, obviously this marketing technology marketplace is very rapidly evolving. So that's a good news for digital marketers, because you now have new opportunities and to be able to do things that you were probably not able to do earlier. That's a good news. But in our experience of working with so many customers and so many enterprises across the globe, we increasingly get this sense that the tools are way ahead of many organizations' ability to leverage these tools effectively. So, this is interesting, because you not only, in such a scenario, you not only want to assess what the tools can really do, but also what you can do with them. So that's a key question. So obviously there are two gaps that I'm calling out here. One I'm calling the capacity gap, which is the difference between what the tools can really do versus what you can do with them. And then there is the hyperbole gap, which is what the vendor says their software can do and what the software can really do. So the right side of the equation, the hyperbole gap, that's more easily solved than the capacity gap. In fact, Real Story Group has solved that hyperbole gap for you through our research, through our advisory services, etc. But I want to sort of approach this question of how do we select the right technology, or what's the right way to select this technology, through the lenses of both these gaps. So vendors, obviously, they sugarcoat a bit in terms of their platform capabilities. Probably they sort of underplay the level of customization that is required, or they present work in progress integration efforts as having already been achieved. There is nothing new in this. That presenting a rosy picture is their job, and a bit of diligence on your part can uncover that. And this gap is easily bridged. But the second gap is the onus is really on the enterprises or the customers. So here, when I say a capacity gap, I use the term very broadly. This could refer to several different things, like the breadth and the depth and expertise levels of your current digital marketing teams. It could refer to the technical infrastructure such as CRM that you have for storing all your customer data. Or it could refer to the content that you can offer. If you want to do personalization or segmentation, do you have enough content to be able to serve all of those segments that you're targeting? So it could refer to different things. So essentially, the risk of this capacity gap is that you may not be able to tap the existing capabilities of your tools. So that's the implication for this. So moving to the next slide. So it's interesting to think about why these gaps arise. Even the best of enterprises can find themselves in a quandary, because the shifts can happen faster than your ability to react to them, your ability or your vendor's ability to do course corrections. Some things, just catch you sort of by surprise. So an example that we can all relate to is perhaps the rise of the smartphones or the mobile phones in the enterprise. So moving to the next slide, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this example of the migration of the wild wildebeest in Africa. So I mean, the mobile migration, the migration of consumers is happening in such droves. But I mean, if we pause and think back, actually, this migration is not happening. But my contention is that it has already happened, as we'll see in the next slide. So I will present some data for you. So this is from Ben Evans, who's published a lot of ideas and information under the moniker of the mobile is eating the world. So here what you see, that orange bar is the time that consumers are spending in mobile apps, while the dark gray at the bottom is the time that is spent on desktop or laptop devices. So as you can see here, in June 2013 itself, that's like nearly 2 years ago, consumers were probably spending equal amount of time. But when you look at a year later to June 2014, you'll see that more time is spent in mobile apps than on the web. So, and imagine, I mean, that's why I said the migration has already happened. This is last year's data. So if you look at it, this year's data, I'm sure the gap is widened even more. So if we move to the next slide, while the last slide has presented the mobile versus desktop picture, this slide taken from the latest Internet Trends report that Mary Meeker of the venture capital firm KPCB has put together. This considers a lot more media, not just the mobile and desktop devices, but it sort of considers and also a much longer time frame. Here, the dark blue bars that you see is the time that is spent on desktop or laptop devices, while the green bars at the top are the time spent by consumers on mobile devices. This is why they're consuming different forms of content on these devices. So this gives you the number of hours per day that consumers are spending on these things. So you'll see that in 2013 itself, consumers were spending an equal amount of time in desktops and laptops. And the amount of time that consumers are spending on mobile devices has been only going up since then, while the desktop time has more or less complied. So in 2015, for the first 5 months of this year, more than half the time is being spent on mobile devices, while desktop is only about 42%. So this should tell us something.